95% of who we are by the age of 35 is programmed.
The habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your conscious mind. Then it's programmed subconsciously. So then when the body knows how to do it better than the conscious mind, then for the most part, the greatest habit we have to break is the habit of being ourselves, right? If you keep thinking the same way, your biology begins to become hardwired in a sense. It becomes programmed.
95% of who we are by the age of 35 is programmed. When I read that in your work, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because I just turned 30. And if what you're saying there is true, without realizing it, there's a puppet master that sits above me that's calling the shots in a way that I don't think I've realized. Is that true?
I think if we define a habit as a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thought, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your conscious mind. And it's programmed subconscious. So then when the body knows how to do it better than the conscious mind, then for the most part, the greatest habit we have to break is the habit of being ourselves, right? So there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you keep thinking the same way, if you keep making the same choices, if you keep doing the same things, if you keep reproducing the same experiences and feeling the same emotions, your biology begins to become hardwired in a sense. It becomes programmed. So in order to change a new goal or new vision of your future, you'd have to change something about yourself in order to get there. And you'd have to change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel. When you begin to become conscious of those unconscious thoughts, so conscious that you don't let them slip by your awareness unnoticed or unchecked by you. If you catch yourself speaking in a limited way, or you become conscious that you're behaving in a certain way, in a habit, and you can notice or pay attention to how you're feeling, then you're no longer the program. Now your consciousness observing the program, you're only unconscious when you're in the program. And so to change then is to become so conscious that you don't go unconscious again. And in a sense, that is consciousness that is really the puppet master that really decides who we want to be. I think the biggest problem is that people lose their free will to a set of programs. And so their body is basically programmed into a predictable future based on what they've done in the past. So to change that habituation takes an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of awareness. Well, first of all, when we look closely at certain habits, whether you can ride a bicycle, whether you can speak a language, whether you can snowboard, when you first learn any of those things, it takes an enormous amount of conscious awareness to get your body to do what your mind is intending. But if you keep doing it over and over again, then the body begins to economize it in some way. And so we have a lot of things that we can do automatically or unconsciously or subconsciously that allows us to multitask, to drive your car, to talk on the phone, to do several different things at the same time. So a habit isn't a bad thing. They can work for you or they can work against you. The problem is if you're, as an example, complaining and blaming and making excuses and feeling sorry for yourself and judging other people, and you practice that and you get really good at whatever you practice that enough times that you're unconscious to the fact that you're doing it. The moment you become conscious that you want to change that, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Someone said to me that there's a certain type of behavior pattern that we can't change. They said when we get trauma under the age of 10, things that happen at a very early age, some of those things cannot be changed. And then there's things that happen later in life that can be rewired and changed. Is that true? Are there some traumas, behavior patterns that just appear to be too stubborn and too resistant to change?
We've seen people with really difficult pasts, really brutal pasts that were abused and traumatized at a very early age, repeated traumas that took place in people's lives. And they had night terrors and couldn't be in relationships. They had social anxiety. They had a lot of health concerns. We've seen them completely change to be happy people again, to free themselves from the past. And so I would never put a limitation on change because I just don't think you can really predict that. I think many people that are learning how to change and they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and how it gets easier. I think for the most part, people can change all kinds of things. And when they do change, our research shows that their brain changes, heart rate changes, their gene expression changes. There's thousands of metabolites that are being released into their bloodstream that weren't there prior. There's a host of different changes that take place biologically to kind of support the person's transformation. The process of change and the process of transformation and what meditation actually can do for a person in terms of their biology and some of the changes that we're seeing just in 7 days. My responsibility really is to give people my greatest understanding of the truth and numerous opportunities to experience it, nothing more. There's a way to inspire people into possibility. And so we combine different models of science, whether it's quantum physics or neuroscience or neuroendocrinology or psychoneuroimmunology, the mind-body connection, epigenetics, electromagnetism. All of these sciences allow people to understand themselves better. And if knowledge is power, knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. You can empower people to do something with. So the more you understand what you're doing in the process of change, the more you understand why you're doing it. As I said, the how gets easier. So we now know that if you give people sound scientific information, and that is the contemporary language of mysticism, and they can learn that information, they're basically making new circuits in their brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. But if you don't review what you learn, if you don't repeat it, it's so much easier to forget it than to remember it. So you got to repeat it over and over again. So we allow people in our workshops to then begin to turn and teach it back to somebody. They have to really explain it. If they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain, and something's going to be left to conjecture, to superstition, to dogma, to spirituality, and that's not the result we want. We want them to use science as that model, and if they can explain that model, remind themselves what they've learned, reproduce the same level of mind, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. So they begin to install the neurological hardware in their brain, and they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. If we can set up the conditions in the environment and give them the proper instruction, if they can get their behaviors to match their intentions, if they can get their actions equal to their thoughts, if they can get their mind and body working together, they're going to have a new experience. Now, experience enriches circuitry in the brain. That's what experiences does. The moment those neurons begin to string into place, though, another part of the brain makes a chemical. And that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And the moment you feel unlimited, the moment you feel grateful, the moment you feel empowered, the moment you feel whole, now you're teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. The information is just not in the brain now. The information now is literally in the body. And now you're embodying the truth of that knowledge, of that philosophy, of that theory. So then you're teaching your body and instructing your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. Okay? So then that information that's coming as a new experience is changing your biology in some way. And we've actually shown this.